Bert Smith. And Bert is an emeritus professor from Oxford. In fact, he has a long career also in New York University. He has his own education was actually from Oxford, but he's most famous for being the director of the classical site of Aphrodisias, which is an amazing site in Western Anatolia, in Denizli, I think. And for people who haven't been there, I strongly recommend going, because not only it's a beautiful place in itself, it's also been magnificently excavated, and there is also a very beautiful uh, public archaeological project there, and it is presented to the public in a very beautiful way. I had a lot of nice memories in Aphrodisias. And Bert Smith is also actually from this year onward a visiting professor at Bilkent University, and we are very proud of this, and our students are very happy of him being there. Um, he will be discussing today uh, how the different strands of evidence for public and individual identities at Aphrodisias. And let me pull up the title of his talk is Some Identities at Aphrodisias in Caria. And without further ado, Bert, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Michele. Let me try and operate this. Is that working okay, Michele?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be speaking from the Acropolis at Bilkent here in Ankara, and it's great to address such a distinguished audience out there in the ether. None of us, of course, are in essence anything very much. Our identities as individuals, community members, or exponents of particular social roles are constructed. And certainly the identities we're going to look at this evening were constructed. So I'm not concerned with any deep-seated essentialisms. We're familiar today, I think, with styled postures and mutable identities, and some parts of the ancient world allow us to see them there too. In this introductory slide, the statue on the right wears the crown of a priest, Greek citizen clothes, and a sharp personal identity. Its styled claim is that he is honored not so much for what he is, but for who he is. Individual identity is here very much to the fore. So my talk has three parts, as on the screen now. Brief introduction to the site, a look at a range of identities that the evidence of the city attests, and then a case study of one monument of a rather remarkable figure. So first, introduction to the site. Aphrodisias sits in inland Caria, south of the Meander River. It was a Greek city of the Roman period with a textual epigraphic history from about 200 BC to AD 600. And it had we see it again here in a closer up map just in the valley of the river Morsinos. The city had two very distinct statuses, both very high. In the 1st to 3rd centuries, the town was a free city within the Roman province of Asia. And then in the 4th to 6th centuries, it was the provincial capital of the new province of Caria. The city was famous for its temple of Aphrodite. You see it here as it was turned into a church later, and for its marble carvers and striking statues of handsome local bigwigs like the guy on the right, who we'll hear more about later. The city was a planned drawing board style of place with a clear organization of cemeteries outside the walls, walls around the housing, gridded housing blocks within, stadium up there tucked in inside the city walls at the north, and a neat urban center fitted to the grid as well, and what was probably the old unplanned city to the east. Basic facts, the walls are 3.5 kilometers long. Population, say 8 to 12,000, something like that. In ancient terms for the period we're looking at, this is a medium-sized place. The city was blessed with a fertile territory and excellent marble quarries nearby. And marble was its the main building stone of the city. The site is known today firstly for its charming combination of nature and ruins. It's a great archaeological park, and above all, for archaeologists and historians, for its exceptional preservation. There's a full suite of public buildings that served politics, religion, and entertainment that any self-respecting city of this period felt it needed. So, for example, there's a massive overspecified bath complex for bathing and exercise, but also with grand marbled interiors. There's a full suite of spectator buildings, a stadium for the games, it's a 30,000-seater. City Hall, the Bouleuterion at the upper right, the political stage of the local elite, and the theatre, maybe 8,000 capacity, where the demos, where the people met for assemblies and for entertainment. There were also grandiose symbolic structures like this gate into the sanctuary of Aphrodite. You walked up the street in the foreground, turned left through this gate, and you were then in sacred space on the other side. The city also had some special, unique structures with which it sought to outdo its neighbors in the constant strife for preeminence in the province. Most striking, perhaps, is the Sebasteum, and a temple for the Julio-Claudian emperors that had about 200 life-size marble reliefs to decorate it. No other city in Anatolia had an imperial cult complex of quite this extravagance. At the same time, mid-1st century AD, the city also built itself a massive urban park on the Roman model with a 170-meter long pool, trees around it, and colonnades around the whole thing. The city centre had a kind of strong drawing board design with the public buildings mostly fitted neatly to the grid, with long Ionic colonnades like that on the left, articulating the main public spaces. These colonnades are for strolling, talking, shopping. Citizen space is defined by colonnades like this, and citizen identities are defined in statue honors. You see here two 2nd century statues of local notables, and on the right you see a distribution map of places where whole or parts of honorific statues of this kind have been found. You see there's a clear concentration, for example, in the theatre and in the council house, the political hotspots on the cityscape. Citizen identity is also defined in the very large numbers of sarcophagi and tombs that were placed on the roads in and out of town. You see here a map of sarcophagus and tomb finds draped along those roads. There's a a truly spectacular quantity of these things surviving from Aphrodisias. Those S numbers, you see S17, S16, they refer to our sarcophagus database, which has whole sarcophagi and fragments. Purely textual identities. I'm moving now to my some identities section. Purely textual identities are, of course, always interesting, but images and monuments bring a sharp and potent visualization with them. Statues and busts like that on the left tend to be elite artifacts with sophisticated cultural expression. Sarcophagi, like those on the right, are often elite, but they can also be middle level and reach all the way down to business owners and artisans. Carved marbles represent vital priorities, and a lot of thought and planning and investment went into them. Under the complex society of the Roman Empire, there was a wide range, both in terms of social class and changing ideas from the 1st century BC through to the 6th century AD. When these things come with texts, like the items on the screen do, they stop us getting so much wrong that we would otherwise have got wrong. So, for example, the sarcophagus on the bottom right has a bust on the left in the garland swag, which we know from the inscription represents a slave. And this is a decidedly middle-level artifact. We would have got this wrong without the accompanying text. Maybe a couple more examples. On the left is a grizzled old head of somebody who looks a bit like Julius Caesar, and on the right, what looks like a fundamentalist Christian saint. The figure on the left was not Caesar at all, as we'll see later. And the Christian saint on the right is actually a pagan Neoplatonic philosopher tooled up for the fight against ascendant Christianity. So some examples of the range of different identities in which the cityscape abounds. First of all, collective identities. There was a very strong collective religious identity around the figure of Aphrodite. These people are, after all, Aphrodisians, and they made for themselves a cult figure, which is not a naked Aegean love goddess, but a new old-looking Anatolian fertility goddess, carapaced in a heavy body sheath. For a city and people named after the goddess, this cult image was a fundamental component of community identity, even well into the Christian period. The goddess looks east, not west of the Aegean, and to Old Greece. And the same thing is evident in the choices made for the invented founders of the city, for the heroic mythological identity of the community. These two were carefully chosen. The Aphrodisians couldn't really claim that they were from old Greece, from Argos or Sparta. Everyone knew that wasn't true. So they go the other way and they invent a local and Eastern origins for themselves. First of all, they choose an Anatolian identity, Bellerophon, there in the middle in the relief at the top. He's a famous Lycian hero. There he is with Pegasus and Apollo. And we know he was claimed as and worshipped as a founder of Aphrodisias. The same series of reliefs from the basilica, as you see on the right, as another pair of founders much further to the east. The Aphrodisians claimed Ninos at the upper left. They're sacrificing to an altar with an eagle on it. He was claimed as a founder, and the city at one point was called City of Ninos. And with Ninos comes Semiramis, bottom left, and they're from Assyria, and she's sacrificing with Gordios, a local Phrygian hero. And these were presumably worked up in some local historical work as the city's founders. Aphrodisias was above all an emperor-loving community. The emperor had given Aphrodisias astonishing privileges, and their Sebasteon was their great thank offering for these privileges. And we might then expect to find here Roman-style emperors in this great cult complex. That's not at all what we find. Our expectation is defeated. The emperors are here restyled as heroic supermen, like Achilles on the left, and like a Hellenistic style savior god on the right. Images like this of the Roman Empire did not exist in Rome and Italy. This is an entirely remaking of the emperor into something closer to what people in Anatolia think the emperor should be. The emperors were served by priests who wore gold crowns and purple cloaks, and they were shown in statues and on elite sarcophagi. And these grandees use these public marble media to express a carefully balanced and negotiated style of identity. On the sarcophagus, you see a citizen couple, imperial priest and priestess, who are being led down to Hades by Hermes to the god Hades at the right for judgment, favorable judgment. They give you the kind of narrative that the figure on the left is engaged in too. He's a priest in all his finery. Let's take a closer look at him, at his negotiated identity. He's both a citizen of Aphrodisias and a Roman citizen, which is expressed very clearly in his names. His Roman names are Lucius Antonius Claudius, and his Greek names are Domitianus Diogenes. He's also a lawgiver, as the inscription on his base says. This is a local Greek city office, while his progeny, his sons and grandsons, are Roman senators, a fairly astonishing claim to fame. The Roman is left out of the Greek for senators. As soon as you said senators in this context, everyone knew you meant Roman senators. So Domitianus' text shows that he is a member of that Greek-Roman Reichsaristokratie that ran the East for the empire. He's not a kind of Greco-Roman mashup, but has different identifiable Greek and Roman components in play at the same time. This is there in his name alone, and carried through in the rest of the text. His statue, well, he wears a Greek citizen himation suit. He wears the long, full hair of a traditional Greek priest that come way over his ears, and he wears the gold crown of an imperial priest. So this adds up to a mainly Hellenic posture with a modern add-on in the crown. We have his precise context, which adds a bit more to his the shape of his identity. He stood outside the council houses here, filled with statues. He stood here, right outside one door into the council house, and his niece, Tatiani, stood in the corresponding position on the other side. The pair of them stood on hugely tall bases. These statues are about 4.5 meters tall when they're on their bases. Your head doesn't even come up to here when you're standing beside it. These are immensely impressive major city monuments. His niece Tatiani makes some rather different choices. She wears a thin, sumptuous, rather provocative blouse, and she had a small eros at her feet. You can just see the 2 feet of a little baby eros standing right here. And these, the blouse and the little eros, the eros there in case you didn't get it, express her supreme desirability. Our portrait head also makes some different choices. Unlike his Hellenic priest's long hairstyle, she wears a close version of an imperial court hairstyle of around AD 200. Not because she wants to show a particular closeness to the emperor's wife, but just to show that she's in tune with the latest empire-wide women's fashion. So straight assimilation to Roman ideas is, I think, perhaps surprisingly, thin on the ground. You might ask, well, where are all the people wearing togas? There's quite a few members of the community, like Donatinus and his friends, who were Roman citizens, some even Roman senators. Why aren't there more figures wearing togas? They're extremely rare. We have one example. Here's a rather beautiful toga statue of the early 2nd century. But you'll see the subject is surprisingly young. He's maybe 15, 16, something like that. He's a young local aristocrat who has no civic achievements to his name yet. And for him, Roman citizenship acquired from his father is still in this period a badge of prestige. Now, all these statues that we've looked at are of different shades of citizen. There is little or indeed no place under the long imperial piece for warriors, for thrusting naked figures with weapons or figures wearing the cuirass. The emperor and his regime has a complete monopoly on armed force. The sarcophagi extend our citizen range in lots of different ways. I'll just give you some examples of the interesting and sometimes remarkable range of identities on these big marble monuments. This is a very large aristocratic sarcophagus, and it shows a family group. This is a nurse handing the young son over to the mother, who is holding a spindle in her hand. This is the time-honored symbol of the virtuous wife. The imposing figure of the father, the paterfamilias, on a grand domestic throne, extends his hand in greeting. This is an unusual representation of of family values. He's holding a scroll to show you that he has some aspiration to reading, learning, and literary culture. The sarcophagus also addressed these. The front shows family values. The short ends of the sarcophagus address piety, and both of them show private sacrifices of the wife and the husband sacrificing and praying before an altar. Much more common on these sarcophagi are public postures, like this sarcophagus, where you have a husband and a wife standing in the typical best kind of citizen costume, both for a man and a woman. There's a goddess, a fortune-like goddess in the middle. And to either side, there are two young boys holding palms. Beside their public out-facing role, the two boys are shown as gymnasium figures holding palms from winning in athletics. They're not professional career athletes, they're just showing that they've done well at high school. Because professional athletes look very different. Athletics, of course, was a huge part of the festival life and the international circuit of competition that was part of the annual round in these cities. You see here an athlete's sarcophagus on the left. He's got an athlete's hairstyle, and his many wreaths count up the number of his victories. Palms down below, and the statue on the right is of an even grander figure. He's a local Aphrodisian champion boxer who's won all round the international circuit, as the base tells us. His attributes, boxing leathers, his body style, and his special hairstyle with a shaved head and one lock of hair coming out of the top identify him as a professional. This unitary identity of the professional athlete was internalized by everybody, and a graffiti artist working in that urban park was able to produce, with a few strokes of his chisel, a remarkable pair of athlete portraits, especially the one on the right. Huge, powerful shoulders, powerful neck, a small head, and that what looks like an electrical wire coming out of his head, which is that single lock on top of his head. Shaved head with one lock on top. There was another category of much-loved performer about which there was enormous excitement in the East, and they too have a highly unitary identity, and that's the gladiators. They are nothing else but gladiators, and always with their correct armaments. With a single name like that on the left, a slave name, Eurotas. And their visual definition is even narrower. It's not just gladiator, but they're always shown as a particular kind of gladiator, characterized by their carefully delineated armaments. So Eurotas on the left is what's called a secutor, a pursuer, heavily armed figure. And the one on the right, at his tombstone, set up by his wife, is what's called a thrix, a Thracian style gladiator, identifiable by his particular helmet. Alongside all this athletic and gladiatorial activity, which did consume a lot of the people's imagination, there was, of course, also cultural postures. Culture was much prized, and we see on the right a large, well over life-size statue of someone of intellectual power. Both his posture and his clothing show that he's in the time-honored Hellenistic writer-thinker pose. Principally not wearing a shirt and seated, hunched over, puts you in that category. Aphrodisias had a proud record of historians, novelists, poets, and philosophers, which we know about from a lot of different texts. The very first novelist we know, and the very first novelist whose novel we have, was from Aphrodisias, a man called Caria, who wrote a novel called Carias and Caleroe. Pindar, at the top left there, the classical poet, is very welcome in this big center of town urban dwelling as a tasteful decor to show the house owner's culture. He knows about and is able to read the astonishingly difficult poetry of Pindar. Further down the social scale are quite a lot of sarcophagi of middle levels, small sarcophagi like this one, where the main subject in the arcades are a counting up of the 9 muses. But this one, as several of them do, take out a couple of the muses and put in the deceased man and his wife. So she becomes like a kind of a 9th or an 8th muse. Clearly, what was considered to be a carefully articulated aspiration to culture. Culture also appears in sarcophagi where you have all available 9 spaces, 2 on the short sides and 5 on the front, like this sarcophagus here, where there's 9 muses. And here, the back of the sarcophagus has Dionysus in the center and 4 of his followers to either side, satyrs and pans and the like. They all stand in ancient thinking for pleasure, for the good things in life. It's very much a modern puritanical idea to think that high culture and pleasure are exclusive categories. It was certainly not thought to be so in antiquity. Amongst the urban classes buying these sarcophagi, there's quite an interesting range of makers, craftsmen, artisans who are keen to show their how they earn their wealth. And there's a very large body of sarcophagi that suddenly appear after 212. This was the from many people's point of view, the great year in which the Emperor Caracalla gave citizenship, Roman citizenship, to everybody in the empire who did not already have it. Of course, the elite were not very impressed by this because they already had citizenship. But for the people who didn't have it, it was clearly a big deal. And these people at Aphrodisias and elsewhere start to engage in the articulation of their identities through buying carved marbles of one sort or another. So here's one example of a woman called Aurelia Tate. The name Aurelia tells us immediately that she's a new citizen. Her husband is called Marcus Aurelius Aquilinus, is also a new citizen. They take the name, the nomen of Caracalla Aurelius. And these Aurelii are all over the monuments of the Greek East. Tati has made this, it's her sarcophagus, and she's had it made, she says, for her husband and for 2 children. And she doesn't talk about it in the inscription, but she doesn't need to. Her wealth depends on her ownership of a glass factory, which is shown in the little vignette down below, where you see 2 lower class figures blowing hard either side of a furnace. We have sarcophagi even of marble sculptors. It's a great Aphrodisian pursuit, probably a large part of the local economy, and several marble carvers, workshop owners, are able to buy a sarcophagus. There's a guy on the left. This is a fragment of a columnar sarcophagus of a guy wearing a smock down to his knees, working on the beard of a portrait bust, the hardest part. This sarcophagus, now lost, was owned by a statue maker, a new citizen, Marcus Aurelius Glycon, and a friend called, or a colleague called Alexandros, who was a paint seller. A statue maker and paint seller, of course, go together. You need paint and painters for coloring your marble artifacts. This sarcophagus from Ephesus down below is our best example of a sculptor's workshop as part of the sarcophagus owner's identity. Again, you see a master carver at work wearing a smock, working on a bust, who's to be distinguished from, and he wants you to distinguish him carefully from this guy who's wearing a loincloth. He's a slave who's doing the polishing of a lion leg shaped table leg on a polishing table. There's hierarchies even down at the lower end of the social scale. Slaves brings me as a connection to the third part of my talk on this figure called Gaius Julius Zoilos. And here we go back to the beginning of Aphrodisias' urban history, back in the 30s BC. And we see the multifaceted identities of a local leader in a turbulent period of war and revolution. Each one of these identities, we'll see, is carefully framed on his monument, his tomb monument. This man Zoilos had a truly extraordinary career that was only thrown up in these revolutionary times. He was first an Aphrodisian citizen, then a slave, a Roman slave. Then he was freed, becomes a Roman citizen, and comes back to Aphrodisias, where he's a priest and a dynast. He is a personal friend and was owned by the first emperor Augustus, at that time called Octavian, who in a private letter to one of his agents in the area says, "You know how fond I am of my Zoilos, my Zoilos." So he doesn't appear in literary texts at all. It's entirely an archaeological and epigraphic career, pieced together from lots of different inscriptions and his monument. His career goes like this. He's born sometime around 80 BC. Zoilos, son of somebody, we don't know who, quite interesting. Around 60, say, he's captured by slaving pirates somewhere on the coast. It's the great 60s and 70s, the great period of rampant slavery in the Eastern Empire. He's not ransomed, which shows that he was not of high status. The purpose of capturing people was to immediately ransom them back to their to their homes. He's not ransomed, sold on the slave market, and ends up in Rome. He's brought into the household of Julius Caesar. He's clearly a very smart and executive kind of guy. He passes to Caesar's heir, Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, who sees that this is a very talented person. He's freed, perhaps in Caesar's will or by Octavian, and at the point you're freed in Rome, going from ex-slave to a freeman, you become a Roman citizen. So he goes from being Zoilos, nobody, to being Gaius Julius Zoilos. And just the names Gaius Julius had a tremendous punch. Octavian sends him back to Aphrodisias to be his agent in the city, around about 41 to 39. And we'll see in his monument, he's probably, it's not certain, but he's probably there in 41 to 40 in time to take part in the heroic resistance that Aphrodisias put up to an invasion by the Parthians and a man called Labienus, a renegade Roman general. The Aphrodisians stood up for Rome against them, suffered a terrible sack, and then immediately sent off an embassy to Rome to reap their reward for this outstanding loyalty, and received the privileges on which their future prosperity depended. Freedom within the province of Asia, Eleutheria, Atalaya, tax-free status, great privilege, and Asulia, the asylum rights of the temple. We then know about Zoilos back in Aphrodisias. He holds the crown-wearing office, Stephanophoros, 10 years in a row. He's priest of Aphrodite, priest of freedom, presumably a cult he's set up for life. He undertakes lots of city planning and building. He receives 2 public statues and the tomb monument we're going to look at. So in the cityscape, Zoilos is probably responsible for laying out of that grid. We have no evidence for any part of the grid being built on before the late 1st century BC. And it's a fair bet that he laid out the new grid. He works on a new temple of Aphrodite, number 1. He builds the first big colonnade here on the newly laid out agora, and he builds the stage building of the theatre. Temple, agora, and theatre, 3 key components of any Greek city-state. Quick look at these. Here's his temple with magnificent masonry walls, and it's probably for this temple that the new old statue of Aphrodite is devised and put into it. The stage building of the theatre, this big thing here, great big separate building, was a remarkable novelty in the Greek East. It's inspired, it seems, by Roman idicular theatre facades. That's to say, a big 2-story facade rising up above this Doric stage. The stage goes back from this level and then rises up behind it. It's designed to carry statues. What we need to concentrate on here is Zoilos's intensely provocative inscriptions. He writes his dedication here on the stage facade, and again here, right along here. And the text says, Gaius Julius Zoilos, freedman of freedman. I can't see the writing here, but he's freedman of Caesar, and the Caesar there means Octavian, and the divine Julius's son is Caesar himself. And he gives the stage building and the stage facade with all the statues on it. The real shocker here is, you can see in the inscription here, Gaius Julius Zoilos, and the next word is apeleutheros, the Greek for freedman, which he trumpets in a rather provocative way, which would be quite offensive to the blue-blooded aristocrats who need to sit and look at this thing in the theatre. So he's coming with very low social status, ex-slave status, but with massive force and wealth behind him. The theatre has on it all kinds of extravagant ornament and several statues of victory, which is a military victory. She carries a trophy over her right shoulder. And this presumably refers to the war of Labienus. And Zoilos's part in it. We have two statues of him. The Demos honored Gaius Julius Zoilos, very bald, and the other one says the council and people honored Gaius Julius Zoilos, priest of Aphrodite and of freedom for life. So he has two statues, and one in the theatre, the other one we don't know where, and he's given what was probably a public tomb. It's a truly extravagant monument whose parts of the frieze, the surviving frieze, was found where the red dot is at the northeast city gate, and that may be where it was set up. It's possible that the tomb was there just outside the city gate in the necropolis area. It's also just about possible that it was on top of a foundation of the right size in the middle of the agora. This is not impossible. Late Hellenistic figures of this kind can be honored as founders in the agora in this way. If it was set up there, it wasn't there for very long, because this monument, whatever it was taken down and scraped to its foundations. What we have of the monument is primarily the frieze. And the frieze used to be arranged in various sequences, but we know now the correct sequence from two very simple reasons. It had numbers on it. The joints were numbered 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, etc. These are builders' construction marks, so the people putting the monument up get the thing in the right sequence. So that gives the whole run of it, of this part of it anyway. And we know this is one side of the whole monument because the upper corners here and here are chamfered. That means there was a pier coming out from the frieze at those points. So that's one full side. And we put all the numbered pieces we have together. We can make a plan of it like this. There's one here, another number one here, and another one here. So it was a four-sided square monument, probably with columns or pillars up above, as you see on the right. Certainly outdoing anyone else's tomb monument of the period. So first, the one preserved along the side. There's two equal scenes divided halfway along here, and they represent two aspects of two identities of Zoilos. He appears each time in the middle, here and here, and all these figures are named up above. We don't need to argue about who they are. We're told with labels. So starting at the left, Zoilos appears in a toga, representing himself as a Roman citizen, something extremely rare in this period. Again, would have been quite shocking on the local scene. No one else has citizenship at this time. He is being given a big shield by Andrea. She's stepping forward to give it to him. She is bravery. There was a helmet down here, separately added on the base. So although he's wearing civilian costume, Andrea refers to his military career as a courageous figure. At the same time, he's being crowned by Honor. Honor is acting out her own essence by putting a crown on the great man, and she also carries a cornucopia, the cornucopia of wealth. It was an unusual idea that honor should confer wealth as well. This figure is probably modeled on a Roman figure of Onos, which did carry a cornucopia of this kind. He's standing looking straight out at us with his right arm raised in address. He's addressing us, the viewer. In the next scene, Zoilos is in a completely different costume and identity. He's wearing a long chlamys, a long cloak, all the way down to his ankles. This is the kind of cloak you wear for traveling. He's wearing a traveling cloak, and he's wearing a traveler's broad-brimmed sun hat. He's arriving, I think, back at Aphrodisias, being greeted by this classical-looking figure of the demos. The people is welcoming their lost son back home. The herm, it's a herm of the gates, represents the meeting at the city boundary. The city boundary is defended by a big shield. It's a defended city gate, even though in this period, Aphrodisias had no city wall. The wreaths in the background count up the number of times he held that office of crown wearer, after whom the year was named. So he's shaking hands with Demos, and at the same time, he's being crowned by Polis, the city. She swoops in like a moving goddess, flying in with this parachute of drapery behind her to crown him. This is a crown up. She's just about to put it on his head, even though he's still wearing his hat. It's she's a bit quick off the mark, but a lot of things are pushed together in this elevated allegorical narrative. Most striking here, even more striking than in the previous scene, Zoilos, ex-slave imperial agent, traveling ambassador, traveler, is showing himself at nearly the same size as Demos and Polis. Demos and Polis are divinities, and in Greek thinking of the period, a normal citizen should be, well, about half the size of a god or goddess. It's quite a strong, bold claim, this parity of scale. Round the corner, one other aspect of Zoilos's identity, there's a great big bit of drapery sticking out in the front of his figure here, which was carefully worked into the block from which this was carved, which you can see here, sticks way out. He's got something underneath his cloak that was felt to be extremely important. And it can really only be the hilt of his sword. He's wearing a sword underneath his cloak. So he's coming with a not very well veiled threat of force behind him. He's got imperial muscle with him. Moving around the monument, on the next corner behind bravery, she has a number on her back here, and the same number appears just here, a Z. And here is the figure of Roma, juxtaposed with bravery. And we need to imagine a three-figured group. Probably there were on each side 2 3-figured groups. If we're looking for a divinity to go with Roma, this subject here Pistis was a personification of faith, trustworthiness, loyalty. Pistis is a good Greek virtue, but it has a especially valued meaning for Rome and for Roman treaties. It's what Rome demands. Rome demands loyalty from its friends and allies. You see here a coin of loyalty, pistis, crowning Roma on a South Italian coin. So I would imagine a three-figured group here of loyalty, crowning Zoilos in the middle, with Roma on the right. Round the next corner is a truly fabulous figure of Ion. Ion means eternity, eternal time. He's got his hand up to the side of his head, like prophets have or thinkers have. It's a sign of worry about the future. He's looking into all future time and is concerned about it. If we want a figure to go with eternity, we have another panel without a number that represents mneme, or remembrance. I would put mneme on the left with Zoilos in the middle and eternity on the right. So you would have a very easy elevated allegory of the eternal memory of the great man. Mneme shows that this is certainly a tomb monument. Mneme is the guiding idea of tombs. We have another panel in two fragments, which represents a figure called Minos. Minos, only the S is missing. This is Minos, king of Crete, and who became the senior judge of the underworld. The two parts can be restored like this, with a senior figure seated on a throne. Clearly there's a scene where Zoilos comes before Minos to be judged, like that imperial priest on the sarcophagus we looked at. We might imagine him in another of his costumes, wrapped up in a Greek citizen Himation suit. Here the figure again labeled Zoilos. So this would be Zoilos coming down to be judged by King Minos. The figure on the left, like on the sarcophagus, we should imagine Hermes, leader of souls, something like that. It will be a natural sequence. You might ask, why is the senior judge of the underworld judging Zoilos? Why is it not just Hades or one of the other judges? Well, Minos was the senior judge. The other two judges only judged respectively souls from Europe or souls from Asia. And Zoilos is quintessentially a man with an identity both in Europe, in Italy, in Rome, and in Asia at his home city of Aphrodisias. So he needs someone who could deal with his double identity as a Roman and an Aphrodisian. So we see, this is the full side again, an elevated allegorical narrative of a brilliant career and its heroes' multiple identities as a Roman, a Greek, an armed ambassador, and a soldier. Now, just to finish, Zoilos was a loyal Caesarian, and the great dictator's intensely individual personal style shaped the portraits of a generation of his followers. Rome is full of freedmen and others who take on this style, this strongly realistic style of Julius Caesar. Zoilos too we have a large portrait from the theatre of this exact period that probably represents Zoilos in full Caesarean mode. And that's the head we looked at earlier. It's not Caesar himself. It doesn't conform to Caesar's portrait typology. And Caesar has no attested portrait at Aphrodisias. The head belongs to this period and was found in the theatre where we know Zoilos had a statue. And it shows him, the subject wears a toga with a veil over his head. The toga is pulled up over his head. And this is a kind of knowing representation of Roman practice of sacrificing only with your head covered. Greek sacrifice with the head uncovered, Romans with the head covered. So it's a knowing Roman detail, along with the gaunt, balding, thin-lipped style of Zoilos's master and former owner. The Gaius Julius aspect of his identity is manifest in his individual physiognomy. So I'll end there and hope to have given you some idea of the wide range of identities on display in the complex cultural organism of the Greek cities under the Roman Empire. Thank you very much.